When peace shatters, empires burn. Genius, loyalty, betrayal. The year is 542 AD. The war against the Ostrogoths has dragged on for years. Cities have been besieged, armies shattered, and the Italian countryside ravaged beyond recognition. But no one in the Roman high command could have foreseen the next blow, one that would come not from the sword, but from the invisible hand of death. It begins quietly, in the bustling harbors of Constantinople, then in the marketplaces of Sicily and Naples. Strange rumors ripple through the crowds. Whispers of a mysterious sickness. Sailors speak of bodies stacked along the quays in Alexandria, of streets in Antioch choked with the dead. Within weeks, those whispers become a roar. The plague has arrived, the unseen enemy. It strikes without mercy. At first, men complain of fever and dizziness. Then swellings appear, buboes, black and purple, swelling in the armpits, groin, and neck. The pain is indescribable. By the third day, the victim is either delirious or dead. The Roman army, already stretched thin, is devastated. Whole units vanish from the rolls in a matter of days. Siege lines crumble as soldiers collapse at their posts. Supply trains stop moving, the drivers too sick to stand. Belisarius' own staff is not spared. Clerks, scouts, and even seasoned centurions fall victim. In the cities, the horror is beyond words. Corpses pile in alleyways. The air reeks of decay. Families abandon their homes. Priests work without rest, offering last rites until they themselves succumb. The imperial treasury bleeds silver to pay for mass graves. Could the Eastern Roman Empire have survived without this plague interrupting Justinian's wars? If you were a commander, how would you lead your army through a disaster like this? The War Council in shadows. In a dimly lit chamber of Ravenna, Belisarius summons his remaining commanders. Maps of Italy lie unrolled on the table, weighed down with daggers. The faces around him are gaunt, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. "We are fighting two wars," Belisarius begins, his voice low. "One against the Goths, and one against death itself." The generals speak in turn. John, loyal to Narses rather than Belisarius, warns that the plague will make any offensive impossible. Others press for withdrawal, fearing their troops will desert if forced to march. The question of reinforcements from Constantinople is raised, but no answer comes. The emperor himself is said to be gravely ill, and beneath the surface of military debate, suspicion festers. Whispers pass between officers. Why has Narses not reinforced Belisarius? Is the court in Constantinople using the plague as an excuse to curb his growing power? Could Justinian's ministers see the general as a threat rather than a savior? Every word in the council chamber is weighed like gold and guarded like state secrets. Do you think Belisarius was deliberately undermined by political rivals? In a war council like this, would you risk speaking your true mind or stay silent to survive? A commander's burden. Belisarius walks alone that night, the oil lamps of Ravenna flickering in the mist. He has fought Persians on the hurning plains of Dara, ridden through the dust storms of North Africa, and faced the towering gates of Rome itself. But this, the plague, is an enemy without a face, without a strategy to counter. It does not parley, it cannot be deceived, and it never tires. He knows that even if he defeats the Ostrogoths, the Empire's strength is draining away drop by drop. The plague does not just kill soldiers, it kills taxpayers, artisans, sailors, and farmers. It eats the very foundation of imperial power. And still, orders must be given, cities must be defended. Enemies, both foreign and domestic, must be watched. The burden is unbearable, but Belisarius bears it in silence. The glory that once surrounded Belisarius was fading. In the aftermath of Ravenna, he had been the man who restored Italy to imperial hands, hailed as Rome's savior. But in Constantinople, victory had bred something far more dangerous than any Gothic army: suspicion. Whispers wound their way through the marble corridors of the great palace. His loyalty to Justinian was no longer taken for granted. Some said he had grown too powerful, too admired by soldiers and citizens alike. Others hinted that his ambitions might stretch beyond mere service to the emperor. Belisarius, who had once commanded tens of thousands, now found himself hemmed in by politics, court intrigue, and rivals eager to see him diminished. Justinian, never one to tolerate potential threats to his throne, began to quietly strip him of authority. Assignments were delayed, commands reduced, resources withheld. When Belisarius returned from Italy instead of triumphal processions, he was met with calculated distance. The emperor offered polite praise in public, but behind closed doors his trust had cracked. Meanwhile, the empire's fortunes were shifting. The grand vision of a restored Roman Mediterranean was beginning to collapse under its own weight. In the east, the Persians pressed hard against imperial borders, draining troops and gold. In North Africa, revolts threatened the stability of the newly conquered Vandal lands. Italy, liberated only years before, was once again sliding into chaos as the Gothic resistance rekindled. And then came the blow that no army could withstand: plague. The Justinianic Plague, sweeping through Constantinople in 541, cut down rich and poor alike. Streets once alive with trade and ceremony became silent, choked with funeral processions. Grain ships rotted in harbors, their crews dead before unloading. Entire regiments vanished in weeks, their banners lowered forever. Some estimates suggest that a third, perhaps even half, of the empire's population perished. War, disease, and mistrust formed a triple weight, pressing down upon the empire, and in that climate, Belisarius's influence withered. Though he would be recalled for later campaigns, the days when he commanded with near total authority were over. His victories in Africa and Italy, once the jewels of Justinian's reign, were now shadows in the minds of courtiers who cared more for intrigue than history. Belisarius, still loyal despite the slights, served on. But the unspoken truth was clear. The empire he had fought to reunite was fracturing again, and the man who had held its enemies at bay was no longer its favored champion. In the end, the fall from power was not a single dramatic blow, but a slow erosion, one decree at a time, One withheld order after another until the greatest general of his age stood on the margins of the world he had helped save. Do you think Justinian's mistrust of Belisarius was justified, or was it a tragic waste of talent? Could the empire have avoided its decline if Belisarius had been given full command again? In 544 AD, Belisarius was summoned back to Italy, but this time with barely a shadow of his former army. The once mighty general, who had broken the Ostrogothic siege of Rome and captured Ravenna, now faced a new adversary. Totila, the ambitious and charismatic leader of the Goths. Rome was once again under threat. Yet Belisarius had no imperial resources, no political backing, and only the loyalty of a handful of battle-worn soldiers. It was a return to war without the tools to win it. A mission that seemed more a test of endurance than of strategy. Despite the impossible odds, Belisarius fought on. His name alone was enough to inspire fear in his enemies and hope in his allies. But every victory was fleeting, every gain undermined by the emperor's refusal to commit fully to the Italian war. The veteran commander was left to wage a campaign of defiance, not for conquest, but for survival. And so, the story closes not with triumph, but with the image of Belisarius riding once more into the heart of Italy, outnumbered yet unbroken. The clash with Totila was only the beginning. The fate of Rome, and the legend of its last great general, was still to be decided. Do you think Belisarius could have defeated Totila if he had been given the full support of the empire? Should history remember him as Rome's savior, or as a hero betrayed by his own emperor?